How are you looking at those now? How do you really flip your own world in the moment?
What used to trigger me to no end, or I'd hold on to something bad that happened to me. We get into that self-pity or into victimhood. Oh, why did this happen to me? This is so unfair. And you're just wallowing in that muck. I look at it from a third-party perspective, like, isn't that interesting? Or what about this is right? Or what is this giving me as a gift? So that's come with a lot of trial and error. I'm not going to say it was an easy process because I used to wallow in all that, but I always see it as like, okay, this is a stepping stone to something better.
Welcome to the ReLaunch podcast. And you know how I feel about delivering you guys the goods and really helping you shift your future. And we always think it's got to take a lot of time. Can we just say, no, it doesn't? Today, I have a very special guest, and she is part of the ReLaunch team, Patty Dominguez. I have had the pleasure of knowing her for almost 8 years. We have been in a mastermind that was all about your inner strength, success. How do you get it? How do you quantum leap into the future and know that whatever you want is already happening for you? And people are like, wait, what? This doesn't even make any sense. Well, today we're going to break it down. We're going to give you some really incredible, you know that we talk a lot about neuroscience, ancient wisdom, and this twist to modern development. And again, that's all the inners, that's the inside working. And then when you get the inside working, the outside manifests. Whatever your goals are, your priorities, your objectives, they start to fall in place. So, Patty, it is so great. And I'm like, the people listening right now are in for such a treat. You are exceptional when it talks about trying to create that rich life in all areas as you relaunch it forward. So, super excited to go deep into this conversation.
Likewise, Hilary. And if anything, 8 years ago when we first met, I think you will agree with me that we're gluttons for punishment, meaning like, tell me where else I could do better. How can I be better? What else is possible? And so we just have this innate ability to want to flip our worlds, right? So I know for me, I love the prospect of change, the prospect of saying there's more there. And I always say, like, if there's an inkling of a desire, like, what would be possible? What could I entertain? What is really available for me, that just means you have a calling to flip your world. So
Okay.
that's why I resonate with what you talk about so deeply.
Well, and here's the thing, when you talk about really what we're trying to do very quickly, flip your world. Flip your world. And what does that really mean? It means if you are feeling stuck, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling underwhelmed, if you're feeling like, is this all there is? I'm
Mhm.
kind of like, this is, I'm destined to be doing what I'm currently doing. Both Patty and I are here to tell you, no, you're not. This is the moment of relaunch that's happening for you as you are listening to the show. And so, Patty, when you think about this concept of that you can actually change your thoughts, you can change outcomes, and that in order for growth to happen, you have to be doing something different.
Mhm.
You've been studying all about, in all different areas. You are a just this intense learner. You never stop learning. Let me ask you, what have you done specifically to help you change your thoughts, which then change your outcome? Because sometimes we get caught in our own way and we can't get out of our own way.
Well, I think one of the key things is when those thoughts around could I do more, could I be more, could I, that is your intuition. You call it your wise woman. And I think that's so important to start to really listen because we get so reactive in our day to day lives where we're waiting things to happen to us somehow. But when you really recognize that your outer world is just a reflection of your inner world, when I first heard that, that literally flipped everything around for me, because I was like, well, what do you mean? And so I really admire what you've been able to build in your life. And if you think about it, the reflection of everything that you've manifested in your career, the success, the notoriety, the multiple seven figures and all that. A lot of people talk about it, but you be about it, Hilary. So I think what's really important is to really harness that idea that your outer world is determined by your inner world, your thoughts, your behaviors, the way you operate. And so if you don't like what you see in your outer world, well, therein lies, my dear sister listening to this podcast, the opportunity. And so that's what we're really talking about is you have the blueprint, pardon me. You have these 9 keys that you develop, because we were talking about it, because I have the privilege of being inside of the organization. I'm like, well, how do we pull this out? How do we get the secret sauce from you, Hilary? Because you are so in it that you understand it, you know it, right? Like we learned from our dear shaman. There's a level of knowing. You can understand concepts, but when you know them, it's innate. It's inside of you, right? It's indisputable.
Mm.
And that's really what we're getting to, is drawing that out from you, Hilary. You know what it's like to be a seven-figure earner. You
Well,
know what it's like to be successful.
what's interesting is
Yeah.
that it's always about awareness first. You got to be
Hmm.
aware so
100%.
that you have an understanding, so that you can have the knowledge around now what? How can you make things happen? And one of the things that you often hear, and I think social media blows it out of proportion, is the person that you think has it all hasn't always had it all. And probably even right now doesn't have it all. And there's always the relaunches, personal relaunches, professional relaunches, global relaunches that many times we don't talk about until they're past, until you're done with them. And then you're like, oh, let me tell you all about how I was able to overcome this. And I think one of the things that you've done with me is you pulled these out. You're like, Hilary, talk about these things when
Yeah.
they're happening, not just the past ones, not just the divorce, not just the melanoma, not just the raising little kids and trying to feel like, how do you do it? How do you have it all? How do you not burn yourself out? And it's really interesting when you are willing to be vulnerable and say, you know what? It sucked. It was hard. It was challenging. There were tears. There were, feelings like we often say, I was mad. I was sad. I was depressed in so many of these areas. But what I did is that I realized, and it came through one of our absolute incredible teachers, Jim Fortin, who said, you are not your thoughts, you're the thinker of the thoughts. So
Yes.
you have those feelings of being mad or sad or glad or happy, but you are the thinker of those thoughts. So what's so incredible is you wake up in the morning and you feel like it's going to be like, oh god, it's going to be one of those days. Maybe you're like out of your toothpaste, you're out of your, you hit your toe, you go downstairs, you're out of your tea, your coffee, your milk, you're just like, ah, you get that email, you get that text, and you're like, what the heck? But guess what? It's how you act at that moment that will literally change everything. I'm going to tell you a quick story.
Mhm.
And for some, they may have heard this or they haven't. So I was in Japan about a year ago, and one of the most impactful, and I just said this on a podcast I was on, where they said an experience that really shaped, defined, and impacted you. And I
Mm.
said, I got it. So I was in Japan and I was sitting at a tea house, and this little, like, she was probably like 4'8", little woman, all dressed up in her outfit. She told us that she had been studying how to make the best matcha tea, one cup at a time,
Mm.
for over 16 years. And it was just my husband, Ian, myself in this little room. She comes in, and it was like a ballet. It was beautiful. And there was nothing on the wall except for one scroll of like kanji. And so when she was done with the tea and we had been like, oh my God, best tea I've ever had in my life, I looked and I said, what does that say? And she said, it says every day is a good day. And I said, well, why wouldn't it say every day is a great day? And she said, because you have the choice to make it a great day or a terrible day, but it's up to you. And so that's kind of where we are now as we are going forward with this concept of flip your world. So, how do you, when things happen, relaunches happen, how are you looking at those now? How do you really flip your own world in the moment?
Well, what used to trigger me to no end, or I'd hold on to something bad that happened to me. We get into that self-pity or into victimhood. Oh, why did this happen to me? This is so unfair, right? And you're just kind of wallowing in that muck. Now I look at it from a third party perspective, like, isn't that interesting? Or what about this is right? Or what is this giving me as a gift?
Hmm.
So that's come with a lot of trial and error. I'm not going to say it was an easy process because I used to wallow in all that, but it's like I always see it as like, okay, this is a stepping stone to something better. There's something around the corner. Life is always happening for me, even when I think it's not. And I just have to let go. And so all of these philosophies have very much to do with this growth in progress around what does modern personal development look like,
Hmm.
right? And then how do we learn from all of these beautiful ancient books that you and I have both studied? And how do we, I think the biggest part of it is being around other people who give you the permission to be vulnerable. And if you don't have that, if you look around and you're maybe around skeptics or naysayers or what are you talking about, or people negating, I would say removing myself from that has been really pivotal so that it allows me to grow. Because if somebody looks at you and maybe you've taken other personal development courses and say, oh, you've changed. And I would say, no, you've chosen to stay where you are. I'm
Haha,
evolving.
that's so good, Patty.
Right? I'm evolving. And so that's the thing. That's why it's so critical to get around those type of people who are on that same frequency that you talk about, which that doesn't happen enough of. So that's
It,
really
it,
critical.
it doesn't. And I also have heard probably, and it's always interesting when I hear something repeatedly, and I have in the last week where people are like, I've now had two bad things happen. The third is on the way. And I'm like, listen to what you're doing to yourself, because what you're thinking is going to manifest. It is going to come out in the real world. And we talk about it, and I say, what if it doesn't have to be that way? What if you could do a relaunch flip right now and change the way you're viewing that? As you just said, it's the lessons that we're learning in this. It's changing it and saying, my divorce wasn't a negative outcome because I ended up one having this incredible relationship with my children. I got just this quality time with them. I became really close friends with my ex-husband, and I met E, and we're celebrating our 10th year anniversary this year. And so if I looked at it as that negative, like, oh, look at what happened to me, and there is that moment where, again, you have the decision, you can decide. It's one of the biggest gifts that we have as being human beings, is how to decide to look at a situation. And the people I have seen, the people I have coached, the celebrities, the entrepreneurs, the uber successful, when they learn this, that they can reframe, do what we call a relaunch flip, it changes everything. And so we talk about this concept of flip your world. And I remember the day that you and I were talking about it, and we were just going back and forth, and you're like, this is it. This is the program. It's called Flip Your World in 40 Days. In fact, I think it was initially going to be longer because I've done all these longer programs. And
Yeah.
I said, it just feels heavy. And I want everyone to hear me say this. When you are figuring out a product, the next product development, your MVP, your minimal viable product, you're going out and you're trying to raise capital, whatever it is, I want you to think about energetically, how does it feel to you? Is it lighting you up, or is it weighing you down? Is it like as if it's a bank account and it's being depleted, or is it like just putting cash in the bank? I want you to really think of it, because when Patty was pushing me on, Hilary, how long do you want this to be? How long a program? How long? And I said, long enough to have that transformation, long enough for people to understand they're in control of their thoughts, long enough for them to identify their fears, their stories, their limiting
Mm-hmm.
beliefs, and long enough that if they have something that they want to accomplish in their business, that there is time enough to get it done. And so we played around with the date and we're like 40 days. 40 days, it just felt right, 6 weeks. And so we came up with this entire like idea around flip your world in 40 days. And I would love, we talk about the keys, we talk about the, in order to have the relaunch effect actually take place within people, we talk about the ability to have these relaunch keys. Can you, because I love how you explain the principles of the keys. I don't need you to go through each and every one of them, but maybe you could talk about a couple of them from a high level so people understand like how valuable these keys are.
Oh yeah, the keys are drawn from, so when Hillary talks about the ancient lessons, learnings, the wisdom from books like Think and Grow Rich or The Kabbalion or the works of Florence Scovel Shinn or Wallace Wattles. These are timeless. They're timeless principles that you can learn from. And out of that, there are keys that are indisputable that people can harness that basically unlock the different areas of your life. So I'll just give you one. We have done a lot of different calls with people that are interested in the program. So we'll offer a complimentary call just to see if it's a right fit, right? It's got to be right. Like Hillary said, it's got to feel light and right. If it feels heavy and daunting, it's not a good fit. And we understand those principles of energy. But the one thing that I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, more often than not, that people need is clarity. I don't know where to start. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if now is the right time. I don't know how to get started. You're not alone if you feel confused or you just don't know where to start. What is that first step? And so the clarity key is where we start in the Flip Your World in 40 Days, because it is the one thing that without clarity, it's like literally having glasses with whipped cream on them. You can't see anything, you know? And even in the first conversations that we've had, I mean, in week one with people, just even talking out or daring to say what they want, right? When the members say, oh, this is what I want, it's like you're giving yourself permission to make a declaration. You're giving yourself permission to say it's go time, right? And not only that, but you're going to get a support system around you that is going to ensure your accountability, that you are being consistent all the time with this over 40 days. Because guess what? What you've been doing already hasn't worked. So now just give into the fact that what if these 40 days could completely change the trajectory of your life? Would it be worth it? It absolutely would. And so the whole thing is we have the keys, the path, the stepping stones, the support to do. And clarity is such a big one. And I think that that is such a pivotal key that we start with very much on purpose. And just from the first time that they're meeting, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I see it now." You know, that's worth its weight in gold to get
Well,
clarity.
and a lot of times people come and their first response is, I just need to focus. Oh my God, I'm focused on all these different things. My focus is, I'm a squirrel, shiny penny, all these things. That's actually the second part of it. You got to gain clarity on what you're actually going for. And too many times people come out and they'll say, this is what I want in the 40 days. But when you push them on the why, the emotional side, which then really infuses what you're going for, like you can't just be logically thinking it. Left brain isn't going to get you to your success. And I've seen it too many times where people are like, yeah, I just want to hit this number. This is the
Mm-hmm.
number. And then I feel like I've arrived. And then guess what happens? They get there and they're like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. But what I want to say is that you only can focus when you have gone through the clarity key, when
Yeah.
you know. and that's why I think people want to go through the 40-day flip your world multiple times, because it's like, oh my God, that was so good. I want to do it again and again and again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we talk about, New Year's resolutions and how those always fail. But when you have a team, and one of the things that you made sure that we did in Flip Your World in 40 days is that you said not only should there be the coaching around ancient wisdom and neuroscience and
Mm-hmm.
this, twist on modern development, you also said, hey, there's got to be accountability. There's
Mm-hmm.
also got to be the actual coaching around, what does that mean? Why are you doing that? What is the next step? And one of the things that we've woven into it, and every day, everybody out there, listen, there is not a day that goes by in the 40 days that you're not doing something. But one of
Yep.
the keys is literally the tune in power tool. It is one that changes everything in your life. It is one that I have done on every podcast I've ever been on in the last year plus. I've taken the host through the tune in process. For those that are new here today, the process is all around elevating your energy, because when you have a thought, you have an emotion, it has a frequency, it has a vibration. And if it's a negative thought, if it's a self doubt thought, if there's a fear involved in there, you will operate at a lower level, which means when you're trying to create your goals and accomplish your goals, you're not going to hit them, because your
Right.
brain isn't designed to do that. It wants at the same level of vibration, it delivers. And so you're going to say something. I'm going to let you say it before I go into the 4 steps.
Yeah, well, I was going to say all of these things that we're talking about, just as another key, is what's going to give you that quantum leap. Because some people maybe say, oh, well, how do I get all this done in 40 days? That sounds like a lot of work. Not necessarily, because we have already, like, you've come up with the neuroscience behind it around how behaviorally our brain can function to get you that progress, or how to do things so it's not daunting. So I think all of this is kind of going into the workshop that you're doing around quantum leaping and the secrets of creating quantum leaps. This is all fitting together so brilliantly, because there's keys that you got to know, and we share some of the keys, but it's kind of like having part of the combination. You need all the keys to understand how this all plays together so you can quantum leap.
That is so true, because a lot of times you feel like you've got, this load of keys, right? You got all these keys, and then you got to take one and you put it in the lock, and you're seeing if does that work? Does that unlock the code? Does this one? And we really just kind of lay it all out there. Going back to the tune in process, that I just want people to be thinking about is the tune in process is always around your challenge or your intention. That's step number 1. There's so much more here, but just hear me out. Step 2 is all around elevating yourself vibrationally. And we do it with, music, which is just the key to so many ways to elevate yourself. Step 3 is really around the visualization, the imagination taking form, which is huge, because there's a big difference between imagination and just knowledge. And I love the example about somebody, trying to learn how to swim. You can't just imagine yourself swimming. I mean, that would never work. You have to get in the pool, and you actually have to start paddling yourself, holding your breath, doing those things. Same thing here. We imagine, we visualize what we're really going for. And your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what's real and what you are showing it in your imagination. And then the last one is always that micro action. And this is the most significant part of the Flip Your World in 40 Days program, because that program actually, where you go from a understanding, right, to the knowledge of like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to get done. So in wrapping this up, Patty, share with us the steps. What is the next step if somebody's like, I need what they're talking about?
Well, the next step on this, if you are looking for clarity, if you're looking to flip your world in a very good way, if you're looking for accountability, support, you most definitely have to check out the workshop that's coming up. It is called The Secret Behind Quantum Leaping Your Success. Okay, it is time to flip your world. And the first part to do that is to jump on this workshop. You're going to go to secrettoquantumleap.com. That's secret to quantumleap.com. And that gets the ball rolling for you.
And
And
it's
it
free.
is,
It's
and
free.
it's free. I was going to say it's complimentary access. Like, it's so good. It'll open your eyes to what's possible. And you just have to go to secret to quantumleap.com.
Well, Patty, thank you for being here today. Amazing show. Just, again, lighting people's brains up is what we're all about, giving them the ability to have those quantum leaps. What does it really mean for them? And where does the future, what's that next chapter? What's version, not 2.0, but maybe 3.0?
Yeah.
And allowing yourself to quantum leap in both your personal and professional life. So really appreciate you being here.
Me
And
too.
so excited to get as many of the listeners into this program, because best part of what I do is when I see the actual progress, I see the quantum leaps, I see what they're doing, and I see the happiness. It's interesting. There was a recent study where what are people asking for these days more than anything else? And it's around happiness. They want happiness. Well, guess what? This is the key. The key to happiness is, as
Absolutely.
Patty said, it's the secret behind quantum leaping your success. So
Yeah.
good. All right, everyone. Live now, love now, relaunch now. And we will be back again next week with another incredible guest. Take care, everyone.